All right, thank you everybody for having me here. Saj and I were talking about some projects that I did, and we were talking, and I was talking about shipping some stuff to him, but then I realized I should just fly here and be part of this show and present my project. So thanks for helping set this up, and thanks to everybody else who set up the show, Jim. Okay, I have two projects I'm going to present, and I'll start with the VR64. Again, my name is Jim. I have my contact information up here, so if you guys want to contact me later on, please do so. So the first project is VR64. This is virtual reality goggles that I made for the Commodore 64. So, you know, why did I do this? You know, VR seems to be like the hot topic right now, and everybody's, we got a really cool setup back there with the Vive, right? But, you know, like even PayPal has stupid ads about VR, which I don't know how they're associated with VR. But then, you know, it really makes you look stupid while you're doing it. That's my friend playing an early version of the game. So that's fun. So this project really started with my daughter in a science fair project. And so she wanted to do VR goggles as her science fair. So we, you know, looked into how they really work. We made our own goggles. You can see them on the screen there on the desk. They're made out of cardboard, but we got the lenses from Amazon. We made some 3D still images and a 3D movie. So it kind of got me interested in this whole subject, and the whole time I'm thinking, I really want to do this for the Commodore 64. But we did our science fair first. So this is from her, actually I stole these images from her poster. So this is kind of a diagram of how the VR goggles work. And they have these magic lenses in there. And I don't understand the optics completely, but they make things that are close to your eye appear to be far away. And that's part of the magic of the VR goggles and the lenses that are in there. And of course, if you've ever played with like, you know, a real VR goggles or even like Google Cardboard, and you're looking at the app on your phone, there'll be a view on the left and a view on the right. And they look pretty similar, but they have different perspective. And this is another image I stole off her poster for the science fair. You can see here, like in an extreme example, the left eye can look around the left side of the green box and see the star, on the left side of the green box, but the right eye might see the star on the right side of the green box. Obviously, this is a very, very contrived, extreme example, but you do have to set up the two views differently, and we'll get into that a little bit later too. So how did I make this? I took a cheap plastic VR goggles that you're supposed to put your phone in. I found and it took a while, but I found a 5-inch LCD that the Commodore 64 composite output works fine with. And of course I had to have a power supply. Oh, the nice thing about the LCD is it's also NTSC and PAL compatible, so no issues there. And then I used a bunch of hot glue to assemble it all together. I did have to cut some of the plastic out to get it to fit in exactly right. And I do have a blog out there that shows how to do that, or a video. Okay, we're back. So I have a video out on the internet that shows you how to make your own if you'd like to. So I'll go into the details of it a little bit on the software side. So I am using the Commodore 64 screen replicated inside the VR goggles. So the screen has to draw both the left and the right views. So the screen is cut down the middle. The two columns approximately are really unviewable. And so you get the left 19 columns of area to use and the right 19 columns, and cut your screen width in half. Now, the 5-inch LCDs are more of the widescreen format, so that does help. But that gives you a grand total of 152 by 200 pixels per eye, which isn't much. But then if you go in multicolor mode, it's only 76 by 200. So it really does restrict your pixel count, but it works. So for the screen layout, I didn't really measure too much. I just kind of started trying things, and I found if you put objects in the same location for both eyes, then they look like they're at a certain distance. But then the third bullet point, if I move those objects towards the center through the optical lenses, it looks like it's getting closer to you. So I did a lot of work and experimentation on that. So I found if I could move objects in like 10 pixels, each object, one from the left and one from the right, it would look like it was coming closer to you. So that's like a 20 pixel movement of the objects. If I moved it up to about 13 pixels, my eyes would get confused and I'd start seeing double and stuff. So this allowed me to have like 10 levels of depth in the game. So when you see the game playing and you see where the characters are on the screen, the people with the goggles will actually kind of see them in a different space. And we'll look at that in a second. So this is another view of the whole idea of moving the characters towards the center to make them look closer to you. I did also experiment with putting objects on the screen and having them move further from the center, and that did also create made them look further away and created some depth also. But it got really confusing when I had objects that were further from the center and closer to the center. And I thought about it more, and really when you're looking at an object that's far away, your eyes kind of come parallel to each other. But if you look at an object that's closer, your eyes kind of come in and look at that object, but in no case do your eyes ever spread out and look further apart. So I figured that was an unnatural way of looking at things, so I discarded that effort to move objects further from the center to create depth. All right. Yeah, I don't know how to do it on Mac. Sorry. Yeah. What's next? Okay, so that's kind of an explanation of the project and how it came to be. I was going to show a little bit of a demo here. So we'll switch the input to the 64.
It's AV, I think, the top one.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So we've got some 3D still images. Why don't we just focus on two of them? So who wants to look at this in 3D? Okay. Yeah, remove your glasses. So you can put the strap around your head. So this was an experiment I did where I actually took a bottle of Tabasco and took pictures at different angles to try to create the 3D effect. You look at the label, does it look a little bit 3D?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try another one. Hold on. CRX 2018 logo.
Nice. Yeah, it looks.
So which one's closer?
The number is closer than the CRX.
Okay.
But it really is a separation. Yeah.
So you guys ever seen it here, not through the VR goggles, you see it repeated on both sides of the screen, but if you look at the where the number is compared to the R, the number is closer to the center in both cases, and that's creating a 3D effect for him, and he sees the 2018 as being closer to him than the CRX.
Oh, the Tabasco picture doesn't look as nice as this one, more sharp.
That's because of the logo.
The logo design.
That's good logo.
And of course, this one was created. The other one was actually photos that I brought in and tried to create the 3D effect, and it was really an experiment. It didn't work that well, but this stuff did. So now I was going to do a little demo of the game. Do you want to demo the game, or you want somebody else? Okay. So you got to come around here to the front of the computer. With that crazy thing on your head, that's correct. Okay. So in the game, you're going to take your left hand and put it on the computer here in front of you. You're going to use these top two keys to spin left and right. And then these four keys over here with your right hand you use to attack the enemies. And so all you can do, you can spin in your location and attack the enemies. But first, I'm sorry, let me load the game first. Alright, got the game started to load. So as he's playing, we'll talk about what the game looks like and how the 3D effect is created. We've got a fast load cartridge in there, but it still takes a while. That will rotate you left and right in the game.
Is it loading?
Yeah, so the top button will be punch, but you can only punch enemies if they're really close. The next button is knives, and you only have a certain number of those. The next button is bullets, and the last button is grenades. Okay, so in this view, do those objects seem at the same depth?
Space bar when ready.
Yeah. Okay, let's pause on this view for a second. Do you see the VR64 and then the text spacebar when ready?
I see the instructions, but not very sharp. The VR64 is sharp.
Yeah.
The other one is, the indications are closer, but not so sharp.
Yeah.
So which one's closer?
The indications, this is space bar.
Are they on top of each other, the VR64 and the spacebar?
No, the indications are closer, not sharp. The VR64 logo.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's supposed to look centered on top of each other, the VR64 and the spacebar, and it is the movement towards the center that creates the depth. So let's press the spacebar.
That's the fun part of it.
All right, it's just the demo screen, and those text, the white text, should appear closer to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Music and the game.
Okay, let's press spacebar and go to the game. All right, here's the game. So you can rotate around. Yeah, and use those buttons to shoot. So if you see here, the buildings appear, when he's looking down a street, they appear wider on one side than the other. And so what I've done here is the back end of the alley is at the same position, left to right, but the front end of the buildings are moved towards the center, and so that creates the 3D depth. And then if we get to a view where the enemies are at, why don't you rotate to another view and see if you can find the enemies again.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the enemies, they seem to walk, oh, you're being attacked from a different direction.
Turn around.
Oh, you're retired.
It killed you.
So the enemies look like here on the screen that they're walking kind of towards the center. But when you're looking through the VR goggles, they actually look like they're coming straight at you and just getting closer and closer. And that creates the 3D effect. Okay, he's going for round 2. So when I showed this off at a show last year, couple teenagers and like this mom were like fighting all day to get the best score, and I had a little readout of the best score. And the one teenager that got the best score, I think he had like, it was 400 and something, like 429 or something. So you've got 5 right now.
Somebody else.
Thank you for demoing.
Big hand for you.
So this is back at my table. Please stop by, play the game, have fun. We'll go back to the presentation and just talk about a few other things. That's the second assembler program I've ever written. So I was pretty happy that I was able to get it done. Okay, let's go back to So, I'm sure it's the first VR goggles that were made for the Commodore 64. The Amiga actually had VR goggles, and there's one here. So it was like kind of that next generation of computers that started to play with VR. Of course, it didn't become very popular until recently. So I'm sure it's the first VR goggles for the 64. It may be the first VR game available on cassette. I'm pretty sure that's probably the case.
Yeah, for the cassette people.
And that was fun. As being a normal American, I quickly moved from tapes to a disc drive, so I figured out how to make a turbo disc, or a turbo tape.
Yeah.
So I never even owned one before. So here's just some helpful hints that I learned when I made a program for this VR goggles. There's no head tracking. So this is like the processor in the computer and the display. The processor in the computer is doing everything. And the display is just a passive presenting what's also on the monitor here. So there's no head tracking or anything like that. That would take extra electronics, and it'd be pretty hard to write a game on a 1 megahertz machine that automatically tracked with the viewing of the movement of the head. So therefore, keeping the action in the center of the view is pretty important. If you're asking the person to look in the top left corner, they're going to want to move their head, and then you get this unnatural effect. It is composite video, so you do have similar issues that we used to have when we connect our computers to the TVs, where certain colors next to each other bleed real badly and things like that. So you just got to kind of think about that. And really keeping a black background with less, so that if objects are on a black background, the 3D effect's much more pronounced. When you get different textures and things on top of each other, it gets a little confusing. Those enemies marching at you are obviously sprites, and I'm using the priority of the sprites so that they overlay on front of each other. And it works out really well because on the left side, you're going to have a different overlap than the right side because of the 3D perspective. But sometimes when the sprites are on top of each other, it gets a little confusing to the eye. Then you kill one of them, and then you're like, okay, I know what that guy is too. But it's also limiting using sprites because you have to populate sprites on both halves of the screen. So now you can only have 4 sprites in your active screen. Oh, wrong spacebar. So if you wanted to play with a VR64 and own one, you can build your own. I put a build video out on the internet. I've got the designs for the stickers and everything out there. So it's a fun project. It doesn't really take any electronics. I've done some builds on Lemon 64 and on the the Facebook pages and things like that. So I'll probably build some more too. And I do have a few for sale back at my table, and they are a CRX exclusive version that includes the CRX logo on it. Okay, so that's what I had. Any questions or comments?
How big is it?
How big is what?
How big is the executable when you were done?
The executable was 8K, but there's a lot of graphics files that get loaded too.
Right.
And being a newer programmer, I was really worried about all those different views. So there's only 2 views that I have. I have 2 bitmap graphics in there, the street view and the corner view. And those items in the sky that come and go, I have them drawn in every view, and I just change the color in the different views to blank them out. And so it's like one of those old LCD games. So the objects are always there. And if you think about it, you'll see they never overlap each other.
Hey Jim, so first of all, fantastic project, so cool. How much has your daughter been involved still since you started this? Because it kind of seemed like she started something, Daddy got a bit crazy and took it all the way.
So the question is how much my daughter's involved in this?
Yeah.
I've done most of this on my own, and she's like learning JavaScript at school. We did Arduino this summer, which was really fun. It was the first time I'd done Arduino, embarrassingly. So she's into this stuff, but I kind of did this on my own. But then her friends come over and they play it, and I also coach a First Robotics Lego team, and so I got them all playing at one time and stuff. So it's been fun with the kids. And I go to shows and stuff, and the kids really love this, and they just, like I said, that one show, these 2 high school kids were battling all day for the best score. It was funny. It was really fun.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to build another game?
Well, I am working on another game, so no promises. And I got a, typical issue. I got stuck somewhere and it wasn't working right, and I pretty much shelved it for this cycle of shows. I was hoping to have it, for this cycle of shows, but so we'll see someday. There may be another one. It's right now it's a racing game. You're a motorcycle driver, and so you have the 3D effect of the road.
That's cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you thought about a construction kit for people to build their own games?
So the question is, have I thought about a construction kit? What I've thought about doing is I have a subroutine and assembler where you give the sprite an X and a Y location. You want it to appear on the left side of the screen, and you give it a depth number, and then the subroutine will actually move the sprite to where it should be for the perception of the depth, and then replicates it on the other side. So I certainly could release that, but the other thing I've thought about is it'd be really kind of retro geeky fun to write some subroutines for BASIC. So somebody could write a game in BASIC, a VR game in BASIC, and then just call these subroutines with a system call or something to put the sprites on the screen.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But I haven't done either. But I've thought about it. Anything else? Okay, thanks everybody.
I appreciate it.